it may be beneficial for me to actually just scroll down first so that you see the key at the bottom, okay? So, can everybody see that? Is that okay? The size is okay? Okay. So, when you're drawing up a theory of change, I think I'll give you some notes on what a theory of change is, just a few lines, but if I describe it to you, the theory of change is a way in which you map out the key processes. You map out the key processes that you will face in order to come up with your desired impact. Okay? So when we're looking at a logical framework, you actually start from drawing it from the perspective of inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, impact. But when you're looking at a theory of change, you actually start at looking at what is the desired goal. Okay, so what do we want to achieve? So, like for our two examples, what we want to achieve, number one is safe and clean water. And then we map out backwards from what we aim to achieve, mapping out what are the preconditions that are necessary for this to take place, what would then be the short-term results, what would be the outputs, what do we think would be the inputs. So you actually sort of map backwards. And the theory of change is always presented diagrammatically. So it's always with either circles, squares, whatever it is, with arrows, showing you how you're mapping from the goal or your final impact all the way back to the inputs that you would need to be able to achieve that desired goal. So in a sense, it's like the logical framework, but the scholars around it don't like you to say that. But I think it actually makes more sense practically to map backwards than it does to follow through logically. Because I remember, like, the gentleman asked me yesterday, he said, how did you get those outputs, or how did you come up with that? I think the theory of change is the platform that allows you to actually question yourself and think through the process, that it actually makes it easier to come up with your either outcomes and your outputs and the inputs, okay? So just like your logical framework, there are key assumptions that are around your theory of change. Obviously, there'll be source documents. It also deals with indicators, but essentially what you're doing is mapping backwards. So I'm so sorry this is on a PDF, but we can share it with you. So this is a theory of change that I did for livelihoods and food security. I think this is a district project that we're getting for agriculture, and this is an NGO that's based in Bushi that I work for. So this, our final goal over there, which is that to contribute to zero hunger in Zambia by 2030. So remember, contributing to zero hunger is actually a sustainable development goal. I think lives. Now, when you're looking at the theory of change, you actually start by drawing it like this. Let's do it practically on the board. Okay? So since I've told you that it's all about mapping, right? So here, if we said that our goal is to a forest plate, yes? Yes? That's what we want to do, right? Plant trees, that's our goal. This is the goal, okay? Afforestation is our goal. it's essentially like what you have done in the logical framework. It's just that you've mapped backwards by starting off from what you desire to achieve. Then you ask yourself the questions, okay, so if this is what we want to achieve, in the short term, in the long term, this is what we'll have, afforestation. Afforestation will lead to, this is just an example, there's many things that are impacts, like I did say, improved soils, right? Okay? Improved soils will lead to climate adaptation. All these are things that you could explore under long-term changes that will result in you afforesting. But in the short term, when the trees have been planted, the learners are eating, this is what is happening. There's other many short-term changes that you'd also be able to define. What activities do you think we would need to do for us to get to there? So, with your theory of change, you're just mapping backwards, asking yourself, what are the necessary preconditions that need to exist for me to actually achieve my long-term impact? Obviously, your assumptions stay the same. Remember, you have assumptions at each critical constituent of your logical framework or theory of change. So you have to assume that people buy into planting trees, okay? You have to assume that the variety of trees planted are nutritional or have nutritional value. All those kind of things are key assumptions that you will see. So, remember always that your theory of change is presented diagrammatically. I mean, most of the time a logical framework can be in a table or it can be in boxes. But with your theory of change, you need to show the mapping and you need to show the connections between the constituents with arrows. Okay? Any questions? No questions for me. Okay, so this was our theory of change for this DFID project. I think right about here, I think we were asking for, if I'm not mistaken, £280,000. I think we got it. So that is just an example of what you would have to go through in terms of drawing a theory of change. Now more so everybody asks you to draw a theory of change more than anything. But they still want you to do a logical framework. Okay, so I promised you a look on the a past proposal we have written. I think this one is also currently being funded. This is for financial inclusion, you know, to do with women's economic empowerment. So this is all to do with, you know, these projects to do with savings groups. So I'm just highlighting I'm just drawing your attention to how a project proposal would look like. You have the project goal, which also could either be the title, remember. You list down the key project objectives that you will undertake in achieving your goal. Now, they need an overview of the project, as in what is the aim of the project. Remember, we said that is always just a few sentences. Then remember, we spoke about a part about the implementing partners and the approach. You explain who is implementing. Nowadays, more so, every project is going to ask you about what is the key innovation. They want to see innovation. It's like very, very important to them. So your innovation could be technologically inclined, or your innovation could be in the way you deliver your development project. Maybe you have a new, unique way in which you engage with the beneficiaries. So just make sure you describe that as much as you can. And as you can see there, target beneficiaries, They ask you to give a target of the number of people. Now, remember we spoke about the problem statement and we said this is where it's very critical. So we had our own research which we did as an organization, and also you see that there's some statistics that are coming from an international perspective. I think you see them a bit further down. So this is the problem that we want to address in terms of financial inclusion. We work with about 154, we have about 154 savings groups across 18 rural communities, and there's about 4,318 people in the savings groups. 75% are women. Okay, so we detailed our problem. Right, so here with them they put a part called context analysis. So this is what we say desk review, or the research which comes from statistics that's already existing around, you know, your project. And to do with financial inclusion, I think you can't talk about financial inclusion without talking about UNCDF. Because they're in the arm that is all into fintechs and those kind of things. Okay, so then the approach, which was breaking down our activities, breaking them down into deliverable size chunks. In other words, you could say it's some kind of Gantt chart, but we actually do a Gantt chart. So this is their format and their layout. I might be able to take you through 2 or 3 other layouts if I find them. Okay, so here we have to make sure we break down our beneficiaries properly. Okay. Then these were going to be the numbers, our identified indicators for the project. Okay, so we were going to look at financial literacy knowledge, number of improved houses, because what we expect is that if people have access to improved savings, they actually, in the long term, improve their living conditions, improve the meals they have, they eat. They also are more likely to send children to school. Here we talked about project location, where it is located, where it's going to take place. The output results which are going to come out of this. This is, I think it was a 1-year project. So these are the outputs we're going to achieve in a year. And then, of course, your logical framework. So if you look at this from logical framework, they look at the indicators, the means of verification, the critical assumptions. But if you focus on where it says narrative summary, we have to put indicators for the goal, for the outcomes, for the, what else? For the outcomes, for the outputs, for the activities. So, yeah, I pretty much wrote this by myself. If I were to be honest, it took me a whole week of non-sleep to finish it. So, and to be quite honest, it was a lot of effort for not a lot of money. The amount of money was $50,000 US, match fund. So you see, you have to do the risk mitigation. You need to identify your risks. You need to know the likelihood, the impact, and what are your mitigation measures. Sustainability. This is something we haven't gotten to yet, but I did kind of explain before that you need to be making sure that your project is sustainable. Peradventure, you were to drop out or stop working in that place, would it be able to carry on without you? So have you built in the necessary resilience amongst the people you're working with? One of the key things to do in sustainability is to actually ensure that you train the local people as much and make sure they participate as much, because it means that even if you were not there, they'll be able to carry on without you. Right, then we have to detail our processes of monitoring and evaluation, how we go about monitoring and evaluating the project. Okay, for them they also include a procurement plan. You know, procurement is very important. So remember, like I told you, in some of the attachments you need to have 3 invoices and all those kind of things. You have to go through the proper processes for procurement. make sure that you follow the procedures, especially because this is an IFAD funded project. IFAD is part of the United Nations arm. So it's International Fund for Agriculture Development. You would need to go through this process for procurement for anybody to do with the United Nations, anybody to do with USAID, and anything to do with IFAD. So be prepared to do it if you're going to apply for any of those kind of funding. Right. So they were also interested in other, what can we say? Development doesn't exist in a vacuum. Development in all what we do under the guise of development is always interrelated. The reason you do a project on even financial inclusion is because you want to improve the nutrition of the household. So you need to always ensure that there's components there of how you're going to impact nutrition, how you're going to engage with gender, and more so nowadays, how you're going to have youth involvement, youth participation, or youth voices in the work that you're doing. So I think, yeah, so there we go. You find those, and more so nowadays, everybody wants to know how you are engaging with the environment. So, like I said, if we can avoid printing paper, better, because people want to see what kind of policies or procedures or practices that you have that are being climate smart or helping the climate or are contributing towards reducing climate change. You find that across almost every budget, every proposal nowadays. Okay, so then you always have a budget component. So this was a summary budget. I will teach you about budgets soon, so that will be next. They always want to know who is the member of staff, what do they have, what are their qualifications, that kind of thing. So it's always important to ensure that your members of staff have got the relevant qualifications and or experience. So here you have a Gantt chart. You will always have a Gantt chart no matter what project it is. What activity you need to do, when, the person responsible, okay? And you shade when that activity is going to be conducted. I think this project was supposed to be starting in Q3 of the year that we're writing the proposal, so that's why it started being shaded at Q3. So just make sure that if they have stipulated a time in which you expect to get the funding, the time in which you expect to implement the project, you start to shade in the relevant area. Okay. And then for them, they put that what we started with when we were learning about writing your proposal, they asked you to write about your organization at the end and put the stuff about the project you are proposing in the beginning. So then we wrote about our organization, our past performance, what we have achieved, and they wanted to know stuff. So remember, I said to you, if you're going to open an NGO, remember the governance is very important. The representation of women in the governance structure is very important. So good governance means that you will have good management systems. Management, financial management, human resources management, if you have volunteers. Then we spoke a bit about our current projects and past projects, what we have done, who's given us funding, what we have achieved under that funding, and the lessons we've learned. Then we went into the financial information of the income statement for the NGO over the years. Yeah. Then here it was about the performance information of the savings groups, because obviously it's all about finance and they save finance. And then we had to then detail document information about the other implementing partners that we were going to work with in delivering this project. I'm sure you can see some names are standing out there. There's Zone, Plus, Who else were we working with? Vision Fund, Madison Finance. Yeah. Then they wanted to know who's in the management team and what are their key qualifications and all that thing. And they wanted a SWOT analysis. Then they wanted detailed information about our board. So having said that, I think this proposal was about 61 pages. And that is only for $50,000. Can you imagine? So in terms of what you would go through, you go through such a similar process for most, for most funding applications. Most people will give you a template. There's very few people who don't give you a template. And the template is quite extensive. And you need to endeavor to ensure that you fill it out as much as you can. So if you are going to write a project proposal, I would not suggest that you start 3 days before the deadline. Give yourself some time because it requires you to have a lot of information. But however, the more you do it, the more practice you have. Some of the information you always have at your fingertips. So for us, we already detail information about the programs, and by every quarter, we always update what has changed, what numbers have we reached. So when it comes to writing your proposal, quite a few things are just copy and paste because they're already existing. So make sure you already have set documents for your governance, how it works, already written and in place, so that whenever you come across a project proposal, that's a copy and paste. Always have set, information that's already on soft copy about your vision, mission, those kind of things. The only thing that would have to change is what you're going to be proposing in this new project. But if everything else does exist, it will be just a matter of copy and paste. Honestly speaking, even with the budget, it's not that difficult because nowadays more so, almost every funder is looking for you to do an activity-based budget. So if you conduct the same activities over and over again, you have already got a template where you've already budgeted for those activities. Okay? So, having said that, maybe I will teach on budgets and then come back and show you maybe 2 or 3 other examples of proposals. So that one is for a local funding called RUFEP. They're actually still giving money right now if you want to apply. And it's all to do with women's financial inclusion. That's one. The other funding is to do with if you're into mobile banking, mobile banking, like these Airtel money booths and everything. So if you're coming around a project that's going to rely on the use of that, I think they're giving money around that. So anything to do with financial inclusion and access and payment systems and making it easier for people to access financial services. Yes. And now I've actually also seen that there's a lot of funding out there, like DFID has put out a lot of funding currently. So I'll make sure that we go through some of the DFID templates today, like the logical framework, after I teach you the budget. Okay. Any questions? None? So I can... Oh, I can't give you our proposal. Because the problem is that that one is we're actually delivering that project right now. So all the ones I'm going to be showing you are ones which we've actually won and we're actually delivering right now. Old ones. What are you interested in? What kind of old project are you looking for? Okay. But actually, if you were to Google search, you probably would be able to find quite a few proposals out there from different people. Okay. So today I want to teach you about one of the key components then of make or break of your proposal, a budget. Now let me see if I can open a budget template. Okay, so let me just go through this theoretically, then I show you an example, then we do one practically on the board. So budgets must be itemized. Now, I have said to you that nowadays more so you need to have an activity-based budget. So your budget must be based on activities. It means it's much bigger, but it's more detailed, and actually you are less likely to make mistakes. The other thing I would let you know is that most funders don't want to give you a administrative cost of more than 10% of your total budget. So if your administrative costs are between 7 and 10, that is the most agreeable. Anything more than 10, they won't fund it. Has everybody understood what I mean by that? Yeah? Okay. I will show you anyway. Now, if you see point 1, it says it must be itemized. Number 2, how were the figures calculated in terms of staff costs, salaries, organizational running pay? So that's what I meant when I said that most funders don't want to fund more than 10%, okay? Now, in terms of salaries, most of the times, they will also not fund a full salary unless a specific program officer is going to be completely devoted to this project. So all they want to fund in terms of the salary is the level of efforts, okay? Because their assumption is that you're getting money from other places. And their assumption is that that's not the only project that you'll be doing. So which means that in all honesty, your level of effort will be split amongst other different things or other different donors' work. Okay, I'll show you how you calculate the level of efforts as well. Right? You'll see that on a practical example. Number 2, has match funding been applied for or secured? So now more so the world is going match funding crazy. So they want to see whether you can access other funding from elsewhere, or will you be able to make contributions yourself in kind or in cash towards your desired project, okay? So which is the same, quite similar to point 4, is the organization contributing? If so, how much and for what elements, okay? Which brings us on into point 5 again. Are the in-kind contributions from delivery partners? If so, describe what an equivalent cost, okay? So now I want to show you an example of a budget. This is another DFID project that we currently are working on, which I cannot give you the proposal either. This is our current DFID proposal for our, this is actually a report. This is for the education officer, so it's not like the other one. The other one was for agriculture, this one is for education. Okay, so, like I had said to you, I will teach you. Let me walk over here before we do it on the board. I said to you that nowadays also almost every funder wants you to do an activity-based budget, okay? So they want you to detail out each activity, okay? And then they want you to cost each activity in terms of how much that activity will cost, which means you're less likely to fail because you make sure that you put in the total cost of that activity. So the total cost of an activity might also be inclusive of maybe fuel, okay? So for us, if you see this one, our activity name was Improve Teaching Standards in Bush and Wana districts. So it was to introduce new best practice teaching material and new data collection tools, okay? And the match was £1,100, which means the match funder. So now, I told you everybody's going match funding crazy. We're getting funding from DFID. I don't know how much money this project is. Maybe it's, yeah, well, I think we're getting something like £53,000 for this one-year project from DFID for education. So they're giving us £53,000, and we have a match fund partner called Jama International, and I think they're giving us another match of something like 40,000. So altogether, we're getting something like £90,000 for doing this current project that we're doing. Okay? So even as you are developing your budget, there will be a column for match where you put the amount that the match funder is going to be matching with. Okay? And normally, when it comes to most proposals, I would say 98% of all proposals, they'll give you a template for the budget that they want you to use with predefined formulas. Okay? And it's always better to use it. They always give you a guide. There's always one sheet which is the sheet for you to work on and another sheet where they explain how you use it. And yeah, the only other thing I would highlight to you is, oh, sorry, it's become really small. Let me draw your attention now to the bottom. So this is actually based on our report. So we actually have to report, this was 1st July to 30th of September, how much money was spent. So if we overspend, why? If we underspend, why? Has the activity changed or moved? We need to detail that in the budget. So, now, I want to show you here where it says staff costs, right? So remember I said to you that since this project is about our education officer program, you see that he's at 100%, his whole salary will be paid by this project, but the director is only at 5% because the directors are overseeing other projects, which is true with many other projects. We have 2 accountants, and so the accountant is only going to be on this project for 10% to make sure that she works with the senior programs officer on this project. The only other key person that should also be in the staff costs, maybe if we didn't put it there, maybe but it is definitely in there, is monitoring and evaluation. That's another staff cost that should never go not in the project proposal all the time, because you need to monitor your project. And a lot of the time, your monitoring and evaluation should be anything between 10% to 50 to 60, okay, depending on how extensive the project is, all right? So, yeah, that is the only other person who's got the most weighting of the project. No. No. It's 5% of his salary. So he has an agreed salary that he gets. So 5% of his salary is going to be paid by this project. The other, what's 5 minus? The other 95% is being covered by different other projects. So it's based on the salary, not on the project. The only money that is based on the total project cost is your administration cost. So our administration cost in this project is about £90,000. It's only allowed to be 9,000. So you're supposed to be 10% of the total cost of the project. Okay? Right. So level of effort is calculated over percentage over the person's salary. Okay? So I guess you see monitoring and evaluation there. That has a whole component and a whole budgeting structure of its own self. Now this is only a report, so it's only based on what we spent this quarter, so it's not exactly the report on the entire budget. So having said that, and having drawn your attention to it, if per adventure you had to do a budget by yourself and they hadn't given you a template, let us just do one quickly here on the board that would be helpful for you. Make sure that if ever you are giving anybody a budget, you actually do it in Excel. It's just proper practice. Okay? So, if you're going to set up an NGO, apart from having a good governance and board system, the other one person you need to invest in, apart from a monitoring evaluation person, is a good accountant. cost has got a place where you allocate it, okay? So is it an administrative cost? Is it a, what cost? Is it a, like, stationary cost? Like, they ask you to define or allocate the place or category in which your cost falls, okay? So is it an equipment cost? Is it an asset cost? I think there's different things. Normally there's a drop-down button for you to select which cost allocation it would fall under. So maybe this might fall under our program, okay? contribution has a monetary value. Okay? So if your in-kind contribution to your project is your laptops have got a monetary value. If your in-kind contribution is your cash, is the money in the bank, and they want to see it upfront before they even give you money. So if you're going to say the cash contribution, make sure you have the money to show in your bank account. If it's in-kind, attach a monetary value to it. Okay? So that is what match funding is all about. What you will contribute towards your project, either in kind or in cash, available at the time when the project needs to start. So everyone these days is asking for an activity-based budget. I can give you some budget templates, that's fine, with activity, with included, I think, formulas. Just this plus this multiplied by that give you the total, that kind of thing. Because it's always prudent to do it in Excel. That said, if you have a good accountant, or you find out the cost of everything by breaking it down, there is no way you will fail on the budget section. It's not that complex. Because you know the cost of what is going to be. Now, a lot of funders don't like to fund miscellaneous costs, so don't have their miscellaneous cost. I'm saying this to you, but don't say that you heard it from me. If there are some miscellaneous costs, try and as much as you can absorb them in things like this where they won't query. Okay? Because in this total cost here, it will include maybe you need to hire a venue, whatever. So if you needed some miscellaneous costs that you were going to incur, for instance, if you're going to work in the rural areas, you're not going to speak to a chief without money. And where is that money going to come from? It's not going to come from your pocket. But that is not a cost you can tell a donor. They don't like to hear those things. It's not transparent, it's not this, it's not what, it's bribery. So, be clever enough to embed it in some of those costs that cannot be queried. Okay? But don't forget, if you're asking for receipts, you could say, we also included the cost of refreshments. Even if you're going to buy them with drinks which are worth 5 kwacha, you can maybe say the drinks are going to cost us 8 kwacha 50 for whatever. It's simple accounting. Balance. Yes, the receipts will show the actual price. So what I'm saying to you is that be clever in how you will cost that, yes? Let me tell you, when it comes to the donor looking at your receipts, they will look at your receipt on venue, hire, blah, 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 blah. Those other miscellaneous costs, the only person who can actually catch it is an auditor, not your donor. Okay? So, this is why you need to be clever in how you would document that one. So how you would report this one is that when it comes to reporting, you can only report the most important costs. For instance, the receipt for the hire. Then you leave out the receipts for the refreshments. Do you see what I mean? Because you are allowed to have refreshments. Yes? So, your receipts there, or when you write your final report, you write your final report that the total cost of this activity cost us 20,000, which is what you had budgeted for. Maybe knowing that it cost you only 15,000 for the hire and the drinks. The other 5,000 you had to pay the chiefs, the this, the that. Your report will tally with your budget. That's what the donor cares about. Okay? Any questions there on the budget? No questions? Okay. So, if we don't have any questions, we'll carry on in finishing this document. Okay, so publicity. How will the project be publicized? like I did say, nowadays more so you need to engage. You engage so much with social media. Some of the funding you're going to get is actually going to come from social media. So how you use social media and how you present on your information on social media is so critical. So I did say nowadays people require you or would like to see maybe if it's an interview of a beneficiary uploaded onto YouTube, but ask their consent, like I did say. Another thing I was going to say is a lot of the times when you start to deal with other funders, they will actually ask you, or you can ask them to use their logo for your credibility. So you can use their logo on your website, on any information that obviously they have partnered and helped you to provide some kind of impacts, okay? And then I think this part actually ends up with sustainability. How will your project be sustained? Okay? It's very critical to build in sustainability